You are listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my regular weekly guests, and we are all here to share the research, the science, and the strategies, as well as some of the fun, to help you to create a more active life. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my guest this week, Laura Lepley. We're talking about wellness, but holistically, so sit tight. Lauren is a powerhouse in the health and wellness industry, and she uniquely blends her expertise as a personal trainer, a nutritionist. She works in EFT, Timeline Therapy, Master NLP practitioner, breathwork, and she's also a somatic practitioner. So she really works holistically to support and enhance every aspect of her client's life. And I think this is something we're going to be seeing a lot more within wellness, is this much more holistic approach. So welcome, Lauren, and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up with this real holistic wellness approach.
Hello, nice to be here. Thanks ever so much for having me. Well, it comes from need and necessity, if I'm honest. And so I haven't always been in the health and wellness space on the practitioner side. I used to be global operations director for different companies within luxury fashion PR, music, industrial design, executive search. But I actually started out in advertising, in television and radio, on the production side. And after many, many years, I found myself getting quite tired, but more than tired, suffering very badly with mental health. And I had complete and utter burnout and breakdown. And so I decided to take a little bit of time, and I took myself to Morocco for 16 months.
Oh,
And
lovely.
whilst I was, it was really lovely. But whilst I was there, I decided I'm not going to let myself get back into that position. And I knew that more people needed to be aware of the things that I had personally come across and enabled myself to do. So I returned to the UK to train as a personal trainer. Now, I'd always been into fitness, and I think I managed to last as long as I did because I did the things I did. I was going to the gym, I was training. I grew up on dancing, so I was always used to moving my body. It didn't ever go anywhere. But doing that at the same time as the amount of work that I was doing in the industries that I was doing it in, I think that was the only thing that enabled me. With the information I have now, the knowledge I have now, I know actually that was the only thing that enabled me to do what I was doing for so long. And when I trained as a personal trainer, I realized that it wasn't enough. I needed more than just that for myself. So I was training CEOs of businesses around London, and they needed more than the personal training. So I studied into the nutrition further, and I was then diagnosed with cancer. And so then I dived into even more things and more things and more things. And they all just became my way of being. It was the way that I could survive. And so the position I'm in now it's not necessarily a privilege or luck. It's a place of responsibility that I feel that I have, and I am able to use my resilience that has been built for purpose, and that purpose is to share the 360 of complete wellness. It's not inside, it's not outside, it's so many moving parts, and we can never be truly ourselves in our optimal condition unless all of those moving parts are working. So that's how I got here.
And that's it, isn't it? It's using a car as an analogy. It's, if your tires are rubbish, then the car's not going to function as well. The fuel efficiency won't be as good. If the windscreen wipers don't work, it's and sometimes it's the smaller and less obvious aspects of our lives that actually can make quite a substantial difference to whether we feel good or whether we feel not so good, isn't it? And this is where I think people like you, there's a lot of people now are going into a much more holistic approach towards health, wellness, fitness, everything, because we're recognizing that actually there's no point in saying let's go and do resistance training because it's good for X, Y, and Z. You've got to have the nutrition to back it up. You've got to have the balance. You've got there's so much more to it than just saying I'm going to take you running and that's enough. It's not, is it?
It's not. And I'm really big on people having a wider scope of awareness and knowledge before they even look at delivering one aspect of the spectrum, because everything has a knock on effect. So, yes, resistance training is amazing. And
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
there are so few people it's not the best thing for, but there are people it's not best things for. So, and I think that sometimes if you are only aware of one part of the cog, you really miss out, and it can be quite detrimental for people. So I found this out in so many different situations, that there was more to know. And as we know, the more you know, the more that you
Yeah.
realize there's more to know. So it becomes a bigger and bigger pot that we're swimming in, which I personally love. And but yeah, it's that understanding for me to keep it holistic. Holistic not being woo woo as it sometimes is associated with now. It's like, oh, it's holistic, it's holistic. It's like, hang on, holistic just means we're looking at something from every single angle to make sure that we have all the information that we need to prescribe what you need. And it's the same with nutrition, it's the same with yoga, it's the same with, yoga can be very dynamic or it can be very restorative. There are so many variations of every single thing. It really does take somebody to have such a wide knowledge to be able to correctly do that prescription service for someone. When we think of the NHS, for example, you see this specialist, this specialist, that one, and that one, and that one. And if they don't talk,
Yeah.
it's not helping anybody.
That's it, isn't it? And I think this is something that, we talk about specialists like yourself, like myself, but actually I think the general public are starting to tune in a lot more to think that it not just being one element of their lifestyles or whatever that needs to be fixed, that needs to be changed, that needs to be improved. Whereas it would be, right, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to get stronger. They're now thinking, right, yes, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to get stronger, but I also need my cardio fitness to be better. I need to be more flexible. I need better balance. I need better nutrition. I need better stress management. I need better rest time. I need better quality sleep. And I'm a huge believer, this podcast is all about creating active lives, but activity isn't always harder, faster, stronger, more. Sometimes it's positive stillness. Sometimes it's rest. Sometimes it is what you're doing to fuel your active life. There's so much more to it. And I do think that we're starting to wake up to that. Is it's health is holistic, wellness is holistic. It's not just, if I go to the gym and run on a treadmill 3 times a week, I'll be healthy and fit. We're waking up to the fact that it's a lot more than that, don't you think?
Absolutely. So I have a health and wellness center, so 360 Health and Wellness Center. So, you know, I see it so often. People come in and think, oh, they would set goals and they go, so this is what I need to do. And within about 6 weeks of being there, they are doing all the things because they see and learn and understand it within the community that we have, how much more beneficial it is when everything is supported. So they come in to do like, oh yeah, I really like working out really hard. And then, 6, 8, 12 weeks later, I find them in meditation and breathwork sessions and doing restorative yoga. Or people come in to say, I like yoga and I want to do as many of the yoga sessions, maybe some of the Pilates sessions. And then we find them in women's weightlifting. And I love that.
Yeah. But it's so important, isn't it? And I think there is so much choice available to us now that it's kind of having the opportunity to try things, to see what you like. And to be honest, some people don't like certain forms of activity, they like others, and that's fine, because for me, the more you enjoy something, the more you like doing it, the more you'll do it, but also the more it will open your mind up to what else is out there that you might want to do. And I think sometimes people just say, I don't like the gym, and it's like there's so much more to the gym than just treadmills or weights. There's a lot more you can do there. And we talk about holistic, we talk about wellness, and sometimes our bodies need rest, sometimes our brains need rest, sometimes they need to work hard. It's understanding that our body doesn't just need to exercise, it needs to rest. But the same with our brains. You talk about breath work, about meditation. For a lot of people, that's an element that's missing from true rest. They think, oh well, I sleep or I watch television, I'm resting, but you're not really.
Yeah, there's a big difference.
It's that absence of stimuli.
100%. I often refer to it as the difference between turning yourself onto standby or switching yourself off. So a lot of
Yeah.
the time people are like, oh, I'm totally switched off. I'm like, no, you're on standby. That little light is still flickering and you're still buzzing, you're still operating, so you haven't yet reached an opportunity for complete restoration. And they're like, what do you mean? So rest is actually quite difficult. If you don't know how to actually rest, it takes some time to get yourself into a space that you enable yourself to fully rest. It's that understanding that actually for full rest, I need my metabolism not to be working. I need for my eyes to be able to be restful. I need, it's the same thing with sleep. When you talk to people about lowering your body temperature and having complete darkness so that there's no stimulation going on, people say, oh wow. And it's a lot of the time it's the basics would be so plentiful for so many people if they understood the basics across the spectrum.
And I'm gonna show my age now, but let's go back a few decades. You didn't have the choice of technology, the choice of viewing opportunities and things like that. So you kind of, the TV went off at a certain time of night, not because you decided I don't want to watch TV anymore, because the broadcasting companies shut down. So it wasn't like, yeah, I'm going to stop
Yes, there was
watching. It
nothing
was
on.
no, and you'd have those of you who are young and listening to this. It went. The screen just went black, and then you had this white dot that got smaller and smaller and smaller and just vanished, and it would be that's the end of the night. Quite often they used to play the national anthem as well, but that was it. There was no more TV, so it wasn't a question of what else shall I watch. I'll change channels. A, there were only one or two channels. B, they shut down at a certain time. But now we've got so much choice. We've got access to everything 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, 66 days a year, and like you say, we're always on standby. We never switch off. And I think it's such an important part of that wholeness, isn't it? That whole health approach is recognizing that just because you're not doing anything doesn't mean you're powered down. It just means you're still on standby. You're still, part of you still on alert somewhere. And that's,
Yes, exactly that.
yeah. And this is it. So coming back to activity, and we know activity is just so important. And by activity, I don't mean running. I don't necessarily mean lifting weights. I just mean being more active, using your body, moving your body more, getting into different things. Certainly initially, it's just learn to enjoy moving before you maybe start doing the more structured stuff. What sort of impact has physical activity had on you and on your clients as part of this
Wow.
wellness?
Such a huge effect. And one of the ways that I've noticed how much of an effect movement has on me was when it was taken away from me. So if we reverse that round, someone who's always active and the detriment that occurs when you take it away. So when I had so many surgeries back to back, so 15 surgeries in 18 months, that was 18 months of doing nothing. And for somebody that was very active, understand, like, finding all the things that became a struggle because I couldn't move. And that was couldn't move. That's not, I couldn't do some heavy deadlifts. I couldn't do much at all. Walking and sitting were my things. And like the stiffness of the body, and just the changing mindset and the desires for nutrition and everything else goes with it. We work as like a one system. We forget that we are just one. Everything is just with one working system. So when one bit starts to fall away, everything else does. So when we have to then think that, so when we start building up one thing, and to be honest, movement is the easiest thing to start with. Waking up in the morning and doing some stretches when you get out of bed. So I do somatic movement every single morning when I get out of bed. Stretch, and I do my things, and then I go for a walk every day before I come in to my building, and my days are more productive. I have more clarity in my mind. I feel better. I want to eat better things. And I see it with my clients as well. So I see it with the people within Aliafia at the wellness center, the way, one of our members, one member of the month, not because of an aesthetic change that she had made, but because the work that she was doing became so apparent in her everyday life,
Yeah.
that she won an award at work
Oh, wow.
for her improved quality of work and focus and hitting targets.
It's a knock-on effect, isn't it? When your body's in good shape, and by good shape I don't mean perfect. I mean, it's, because a lot of people live with long-term conditions with all sorts of different things. But it's being in the best condition under the circumstances. It's that knock-on effect to your mind, your mindset, your attitude, your everything, really, isn't it? But equally, if you're not fueling yourself properly with good nutrition, with rest and things like that, then the physical side of it isn't going to be in good form, because that backup. So it's that holistic, it's that whole person approach that's so important, isn't it? So important.
It really is. So if you were to think about like exercises that people do, like the wheel of life, and or it looks like a pie, and you give yourself numbers 1 to 10 in each area. If you can concentrate to try and get things as even as possible, that is your wheel of life. If you're riding on that wheel of life, you want it as least bumpy as possible.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Mine looks like an umbrella some of the time. It's just, but not felt. Yeah, it's literally just a point. But this is it, isn't it? So how do you see the wellness industry moving forward? Because people talk about like the fitness industry, the nutrition industry, the medical fields, as if they're separate entities. But how do you see wellness moving forward?
wellness as a whole moving forward, I think we've got a couple more years yet before it comes as one. I think people are still pushing things in their own direction and thinking that their way is the best way. It's not, being in the industry, people around me do have that understanding that all the parts are needed to the puzzle, but the people they're supporting don't. So they don't have to widen their knowledge at the moment because people are still working with them. And I think it's going to take a few more years yet until everyone really understands that how much more they can support their people by widening the spectrum of their knowledge. And I think it's going to carry on growing the way it has been over the past 5 years. I think we've got that to repeat, and I think it will stay on the trajectory it's on. And I think at that point then, like before we hit 2030, just before then, I think that it's going to be far more collaborative, far more universal, far more intricate studies across the fields as a collective.
Yeah, and it's, if you think within talking about sort of clinical exercise, clinical specialisms and things within fitness, cardiac rehabilitation is well known now. I mean, it's very established. It's a really clear pathway, and it's something that people have some sort of cardiac event or intervention, and they will be very quickly seen by the medical teams, but they'll also be seen by exercise specialists, nutrition specialists, stress management specialists and things like that. There'll be a really good approach to that. And we're starting to see that coming into other things now. like cancer, the cancer rehab pathways, physical activity is very much part of that. And a lot of instructors now are trained up to offer appropriate nutritional support, psychological support. We know it's coming through in pulmonary rehab, in other things, but rehab is great. Once people have had an event, this is often when people say, gosh, I need to do something about my whole life. But we almost need the prehab, don't we? We need the advanced stuff. We need it to happen before people's health becomes so bad that an intervention's needed. It's that awareness, isn't it? Looks more of like I know the NHS do health checks when people are over a certain age. You go along and they do your height, weight, take blood and blood pressure and things like that. But we need more of that so that people can improve their whole health, their wellness.
We need to,
before something happens.
Absolutely, because we need to do things at a younger age for our future self. When you get to that older self, it's already potentially too late. Damage can already have been done. You know,
well, it's never too late, but
to have the as much,
it definitely won't be as easy.
It would be too late to be preventative.
Yeah. Yes. Oh gosh, yes.
So
gosh, yes.
In that sense, if we're talking about
I was going to say as an
care,
example, you know, with our bones, our bone mineral density, especially for women, is at its peak around mid-30s. So if you don't start working on your bones until your 50s, you are at a disadvantage. Yes, you can maintain what you've got, you can slow the decline or whatever, but it won't be as good as if you started in your teens or your 20s.
And that's that's the concerning thing. You know, I have so many women that come to us from perimenopausal ages upwards, because they're like, I have to do something to feel stronger, to feel more able in life. And this, you know, and I'm talking about, you know, 35 people at 35, 40 saying, I feel old, like physically I feel old. I'm not supposed to feel old. I still think I'm 25, but I feel old. And it's, you know, there is always a conversation of these are the things that need to be doing. They're like, well, why didn't anyone tell me that before? And it's hard. So, you know, we do a lot of work to make things clear that we do things now at a younger age for our future self, because and we don't just want to live a long time. We want to live a good time. So it's about how can we add life to our years and not just add years to the life. And the only way of doing that is the internal health.
Yeah. It's like your pension, isn't it? Is you save towards your pension one way or another, whether it's state or private, whatever, but you're putting things away for your pension all through your working life. We need to be doing that for our health, because you know, when we get to retirement age, when we get older, we don't want to slow down. We actually then want to start speeding up and doing all of the things that we probably put off. So we need to be actually healthier in our older age in order to carry on doing what we want to do. And I think this is something people don't equate health with money. It's like I must have enough money to retire, rather than I need to bank my health to retire.
Oh, absolutely. That's so spot on. And, you know, and I think it's also going to be more apparent from like now moving forward with the change in the ages that people have children as well, especially for women. So people are now having children much later on, and then not being able to be as much for their child because they are reaching an age where they haven't thought about their health later on, not just the health at the age to have the child, but what happens when the child is 10. And I think that people have started to feel that a bit more now. And I think that where children will now see their parents feeling that little bit older, they might think, maybe I don't want to feel that old. So my mum had 5 children, 3 of us, then a huge gap, and then 2 more. The way that my mum was able to interact with us, first 3, was so vastly different to the younger 2. And it was one of those things that we were always like, my sister and I have discussed it. It's, Mum used to do like so many like adventures and action things with us. And as she got older, not that she, you know, I mean, you know, my 2 youngest siblings there have, you know, fantastic lives and upbringings, but just different. And when we talk about things, they're like, well, we didn't do stuff like that. And it's, well, yeah, I know. And I think they now, both of them, pay more attention to how they look after themselves for the future them than I would have done. But then when I realized they didn't have as much, it kind of it worked both ways. But I think that is something that we will find moving forward, that where women are having children later, it's not
Yeah.
about egg quality or have I frozen my embryos to have a child. It's how am I going to be as a
Yeah, and
mother
it's I've got grandchildren,
at an
and
older age.
having had a couple of them for a week recently, and it was exhausting. And I'm fit and healthy, and I do all the right stuff. But even that was, I just thought, I don't know. I look back and I think, how on earth did I actually leave the house with 3 children? Because there's so much to think about. But when you're young and you've got loads of energy, you do it. When you're older, it does take a bit longer, and best will in the world, it does. But it's made me even more determined to stay as healthy and fit as possible in all aspects of my wellness, if you like, so that I can just keep doing what I want to do. So what are your thoughts on trends then for physical activity? We've talked about sort of the wellness industry moving forward, but fitness, like physical activity, fitness, what are your thoughts on trends?
We're never going to not have trends. But, and as long as they are things that people are enjoying, they're fine. If it's a trend where people feel that they must do something because it's going to get them the results, that's just false. The basics are getting them the results and getting them where they want to be. It's just packaged up differently. And so, if it's a dancing trend and you love dancing, then this is great news for you. If the trend is to dance and you don't like dancing, and that's the only way in 2024 you're going to achieve particular result, you're going to be miserable doing it. Or if it became, I don't know, we must all be able to do a 24-minute plank, that's the only way you're going to have a healthy life, people would be very miserable.
And this is it, isn't it? For me, enjoyment is one of the big things. Whatever you do for physical activity, if you don't enjoy it, or you don't enjoy the results of it, because I know some people say, I really don't like going to the gym, but I feel so good because I do. So that enjoyment is so important, isn't it? Because it's what keeps you going. If you don't enjoy it, you'll kind of look for excuses not to do it a little bit. And it's, yeah.
You absolutely will look for the excuses. And it's one of, so having studied positive psychology, it's, positive emotion is a fundamental of complete living. And and alongside that, you have to understand the whys of why you do things, because that can also be the enjoyment
Yeah.
from it.
And it's like I say, it might be that you don't particularly enjoy something at the time, but like I say, you enjoy the feeling afterwards. And I do think, there will always be trends. There'll always be, this is the latest one. I mean, actually, when you come down to it, most trends boil down to the same sort of thing. It's fairly basic, but it's the way it's packaged, the way it's promoted, the way it's marketed. But it's, you know what, like you say, there may well be a trend that you think, oh, I could get on board with that, and there may be others you go, nope, not doing that. But even with that, it's about the whole body, isn't it? We've got muscles, we've got bones, we've got a cardiovascular system, we've got the respiratory system, circulation, all of this. It's making sure that somewhere along the line your activity encompasses everything, rather than just saying, well, I go for a run, therefore I'm fit. It's like, well, what about your muscles, what about your bones in your upper body? So I think again, it's making sure that you are looking at your activity holistically as well as your whole life. And that brings us neatly onto one of my passions, which I think a lot of people will know is mental health. Because for me, physical health and mental health go hand in hand. And no,
Absolutely. They cannot be
no,
separated, in fact.
they can't. And that includes nutritional health as well. But it's so important, isn't it, that we, again, we look at our minds and our bodies, rather than just, I'm going to do this for my mental health, I'm going to do this for my physical health. It's about, and again, I suppose it comes back to enjoyment. If you don't enjoy something, mentally you're just not going to look forward to it, and you're going to be doing that. So what are your feelings on that? How can people support themselves in both physical and mental health?
I would like people to consider exercising their minds the way they think about exercising their bodies. And it is a requirement. If you sit on the sofa and don't stimulate your brain, it's going to be very unhappy. It's going to lose its superpowers. The same as if you sit your body on the sofa and you do nothing, you're going to lose your superpowers of movement. So people forget that that's actually the way it works with the mind, with the brain. It has to be utilized, it has to be stimulated. And there are so many parts of the brain that aren't used in this day and age with technology. Um, parts of creativity, memory. If you when whereas as a child you knew everyone's phone number off by heart because it wasn't in the palm of your hand saved. You were using your memory for the most basic things all of the time. Now everything is done for us. We are the laziest of the laziest that the human race has ever been. And as much as we have got technology and we're advancing in certain ways, the human body and its functionality is not. And that's a scary thing.
This is it. When I was doing a master's, and it was really before technology. I mean, we had computers, but the internet was still very, very young. And when you're doing your research, you had to go to the library, you had to look up the journals, you had to look up the books, you then had to order them, you then had to pay for it, and then a week later you'd get the article which you'd then have to read. Now of course it's all online, you can just skim the abstract and then job done. But when you went through all that trouble to get it, you read it because you paid for it. And I think it's, again, people sometimes I think forget that our brains are actually quite lazy in that they will take the easy option whenever they can. So like anything else in our bodies, you need to keep challenging it, you need to keep stimulating it. And I know for cognitive health, never mind mental health, but for cognitive health, for actual the way our brains function, memory and all that sort of stuff, they say you need to keep learning, you need to keep doing new stuff to stimulate your brain to keep active, to keep healthy. And I think a lot of people, like you say, they'll just sit down on the sofa and mindlessly watch television, and the brain's just getting used to being mindlessly entertained without having to think about anything. So when it does have to think about something, it's like, oh, I can't think, I can't make a decision because it hasn't had that stimulation.
Yeah, we will always do the bare minimum. It's known that we are built to survive and not thrive. We have to do that extra push. And what happens when we do that extra push and we break through miniature, tiny, weeny little barriers is there's a sense of accomplishment because we have achieved something, which then kickstarts and triggers a whole wonderful sense of hormones through our body that light us up. And that's the support for mental health. If we forever sit within our comfort zones and do stay comfortable and don't exercise our brains, that hormonal change, that shift, that spark, that firework doesn't happen. That sense of accomplishment doesn't exist. So we have to think us to ourselves all the time, what one thing can I do today that will push me a millimeter further in any direction? And that will support your mental health. Talking about laziness, something you said, you used to have to go through journals. Don't you think that people should still have to do that? Because you don't know what you don't know until you come across it. So
Yeah, exactly.
those people, so when you are searching things online, you only get the answers to what you asked. But if you're reading through a whole study in different journals, things will be shown to you that you didn't know you needed to look for.
Yeah, that's it.
So when people do this stretching their mind and they do this, let's learn something new, let's push my boundaries today, let's feel wonderful and bubbly, do it manually. Do it the hard way, even if it's just for 15 minutes a day. 14 minutes, in fact. 1% of your day.
Yeah. It's almost like, just the difference between
there's
reading a book and reading on an e-reader. There's, I don't know, there just seems to be a difference, doesn't there? I do love an actual book.
Well, it's the same as typing on a word processor
Yeah.
and using a pen and paper. The way it stimulates the brain of having to do the duplication of actually doing the two things, things settle into the mind and they embed themselves. It's the same as when with a book, when you can annotate or you can do those things with something physically in your hand, and you can easily go backwards and forwards and mark things. I know you can do it digitally, but there's something about having that actual touch and the decision, the actual, you're doing the decision making of turning over a page, all of that sensory activity, that sensory process of you doing that allows everything to just embed and be still within you so much stronger.
And ultimately, our brain, like any other part of us, needs to be exercised in order to keep growing, to keep active, to keep healthy. So yeah, really important. So what would be then, just to sum up nicely, what would be your top tips to somebody for holistic wellness, not just being physically active or mentally active? What would be your top tips for somebody for holistic wellness?
I would say the top things to do would be to really know yourself and to know what you truly need. You need to truly understand yourself. So I have call it like the self trinity. So you have self understanding, awareness, and worth. So your self understanding is, how have I got to this position right now? So if I'm here right now, what incidents, what celebrations, what journey have I taken to get here right now? Because that's telling me about my current present time, which is my self awareness. I can only understand how my responses and reactions are due to what's happened in the past. And I can only use that awareness to build upon self worth to look forward to see where I'm going. And within that, you need to understand mind and body and personal desires. Like, you need to understand the true reason of actually doing something to enable that holistic health to be as best it possibly can. If you just think, oh, everyone else is getting lean, I should get lean. Do you actually want to be lean, or do you want to be internally healthy? Everyone's doing yoga and meditation. Okay, yes, it will help everyone, but you need to know why you're doing it, because then that's going to stick for the future. And when you know what all these small steps are, it's about stacking small habits and allowing the compound effect to do the work for you. So understanding yourself and taking small steps is what is going to enable you for holistic health that has longevity, because there's no point. It's not that there's no point, but you want to have lifestyle change for the long term. If we want to look after our future selves, we need to do every single minute between now and that time. We can't just do it now, then take a break, and do it now and take a break. So understanding self, keep it simple, stack those small steps, and know that it is sustainable for the long term. A lot of S's in there.
We love sustainable. I'm grinning here because people can't see this, but I'm grinning because I do a lot. I deliver trainings in training and teaching and assessing and everything, and I talk a lot about Bloom's taxonomy. The first three layers of which are knowledge, understanding, and application. And it's exactly what you said. Know yourself, understand yourself, your whys, your wants, your desires, and then apply yourself to actually achieving them. And I think, that it just, you've put it so simply. Behavior change isn't simple, but when you know yourself, you understand your reasons, and you can then start to apply those small sustainable changes, can't you? And that is what takes you from not well to true wellness. And by true wellness, I mean that's appropriate for you and your circumstances. And that's what we want. There isn't a cookie cutter, this is what everybody should be. It's taking all of you and your circumstances and everything into account and saying, right, this is optimal for you right now. Yeah. Lauren, thank you so much. This has been so interesting. I've actually been making notes about a few things here because there's a couple of things there that I think, gosh, actually, I could do that. And or maybe I need to sort of think a bit more about that. And so I'm really picking up some lovely tips here from you. It's been really, really interesting talking to you. Any final word for our listeners?
Don't rush. Doing the right thing is better than doing the quick thing.
Oh, love it. Love it. So you can get hold of Lauren. Her website is laurenlepley.com. She's on Instagram, Lauren Lepley _. I will put all the links in there. And thank you so much. You've been listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Belitha, and my guest this week, Lauren Lepley, talking all about holistic wellness. Thank you so much for coming in and talking about this because I think it's a really important topic.
Thank you ever so much for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself and got to talk about so many of my favourite things.
Which is always what we want. Thank you for listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Belitho, and my guests. Join me each week for more on how to create and sustain everyday activity, and follow me online at Fitness Career Mentor or Fabulous if you're interested in career development and more on creating active lifestyles.